Alright, hello again. Well, on the first video, I took the old fuel line off of this steel chainsaw here, and I replaced it with this clear, more plastic type of hose. And when I last left off, I couldn't figure out a way to get this hose to stay in there without moving around because the hole's too big. So the answer was staring me right in the face: the old fuel line. This was connected about right there there was a rubber circle that went around in between these two pieces of hose, and I cut that out, and I just put it over this hose. And with this hose being a little bit wider in some spots than this, it expanded it, and it made a good solid hold in here. So this won't be moving up and down. So there's the hose, the original hose, and the new hose right there. And now I just got to reinstall this, put it back together, and we'll hopefully see that it will start up. The fuel line is still connected to the fuel filter in there. I don't know if you can see that or not. That glue that I put on there held pretty good, and it's been about 3 hours since I put the glue on there, so I have no worries and no doubt that the glue is going to stay solid and hold on there. So now to put this back together, it's pretty simple. Once you've done it a few times, you get more used to it. And the reason there's a drill here is I had a few other ideas to try and get that in there before I thought of the old fuel line. I found a few pieces of rubber that would fit that hole. I tried drilling them out to fit the hose through. It didn't really work. And there goes an old chain, but they didn't work. And I'm glad I thought of this because it was sitting right in front of me, quite literally right in front of me. So now to put this back together is pretty simple. You just got to. It's a little bit difficult though at one part because you got to feed the hose up through this little hole right there that's intended for the hose. There's a cutout right there. You feed it through there and onto the carburetor. And once you get that into there, and once you get this end onto the carburetor, and this hose is tight on there, so it's not going to move, it's not going to wiggle, it's nice and tight. I don't have to put a hose clamp or anything on there. Not that I even have a hose clamp that small, but once you get up and through there, you just get the gas tank put back into place, which once you do that, it should be good. And this little thing just popped out a little bit. Stick that back in there. The rubber piece I had in there popped out a little bit, so I was just pushing that back in. And now comes the funnest part in trying to get this thing onto the carburetor, which is quite a lot of fun because now that I think about it, I gotta pull this back out actually, because it doesn't quite go in there. I may have used too much hose. That's what I was talking about in my last video. I always cut a little bit extra, that I can always cut it down. But I'm going to try and get this on there. If I can get it on there and get the fit in there good, then we won't have a problem. But if it proves to be that there is too much, I'll just use the scissors, cut it back like 2 centimeters. Try it again. If it's too much, cut it back another couple centimeters until I get it to fit in there really good. So, one thing I did notice is that this is starting to, despite the fact that it was kind of in there nice and snug, it's not wanting to stay in there quite as well as I had hoped. This rubber piece, it does pop out quite easily. So what I'm going to do, and I said I wasn't going to do this, I'm just going to put a little tiny bit of glue there. I'm not going to put like some excess amount. I'm just going to put just enough just to keep it kind of like snug in there, but not enough that, I'm just going to put it so you can easily pull it out if you just use a little bit of muscle, but not enough that it's just going to keep popping out every time I move around, because I want it to be a nice strong seal so no gas might leak out. So I'm just going to put just a tiny little dab on there, enough that it won't easily pop in and out. The hose itself can still move through the hole in the rubber, but the rubber won't move. So it'll still be it will take the hose in and out if you had to. So I'm just gonna put a tiny bit of glue in there, just enough, like I said, just enough to keep a solid hold on it. Just a little bit in a circle. And just push this down into the glue. Let that dry for a second. And if you remember, I put some of this in the fuel tank, some of this carburetor cleaner, and in the carburetor. I opened up the throttle and sprayed it down there, and I closed the throttle, opened it and closed it a couple times. So it will smoke when I start this thing for the first time here in about 5 minutes. Whenever I get this put back together, it's gonna smoke just based solely off the carburetor cleaner that's in there. I'm just going to crack this window open really quick while it's drying. That way the smoke will go out the window, hopefully. Alright, I got that open. Now here comes the fun part. It's not totally dry yet. It does take like 1 to 2 minutes to get to a point where you can actually start messing around with it a little bit. It does take a minute. And this, now that I noticed that this is the air filter, which goes on right here. Yeah, just like that. Goes on just like that, and this thing was so little used, this thing was still completely white. It looked like somebody used bleach on it almost. That's how white it was. And just from me cutting with it for 20 minutes before the fuel filter came off, that's how dirty it got just within 20 minutes. I mean, you can obviously tell putting it in the light. It's not terrible. You can still see through it relatively well, except for this one little area. And one good way of doing that is getting like a compressor, blowing some air through it, which I have my compressor right there, but it's not that bad. It'll be fine for another few uses, but that's one thing I do on the Poland and on this from now on. Whenever I use it, every time I use it, I like to just go through the saw, clean the chain area, clean the this entire thing right here, clean all that out of wood chippings, because all the wood gets collected in there through that. So all the wood chippings and fine shaving wood dust and stuff gets caught in there, and it's just good to clean it out and clean this out as well. And if it's really dirty and you have to buy a new one, that's not a big deal. They're probably like $1, maybe $2, depending on what kind of saw you have. Like a steel might be a little bit more expensive than that Poland. The Poland one's a little bit thinner than this, so it's not going to be as much money. And at one point on a leaf blower, I didn't have one of these in stock, and I really needed one. And for the time being, I just used a folded up piece of paper towel. I made the same thickness, put that through there, and I just ran it like that for about 2 hours while I was helping my grandmother clean her property with some leaves. And you know, after that, I went to the store and bought a good one. But it's always good to keep an eye on these things, because the dirtier they get, the less air gets in there, and the harder the saw is going to have to work to suck clean air through, and it makes it a lot harder. It makes the saw work a lot harder. That's still not 100% dry, but I think it's dry enough to the point that I can actually start working with it maybe. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to feed this line through the hole here and get it onto the carburetor. And once I get onto the carburetor, I'm going to fit this into this slot here, the cutout. But once I get it onto the carburetor, I'm just going to line it up with the carburetor and get these and just kind of press it on if I can. Well, I got it on, I got it started at least. no, I'm not. It's kind of hard to show you what I'm doing exactly because this bench just isn't quite high enough, and it's kind of hard to hold it and do this at the same time because you got kind of width. I don't know if you can see the hose. Right there is the hose, right on top of this. You know those pliers? Right there's the hose, and I'm just trying to use these just to kind of push it on because it is kind of tight because this hose is just a smidge smaller than the original part that went over the carburetor port. But then the part that goes over the fuel filter is too big. It's kind of weird. The fuel filter part and the carburetor part in this hose are two different sizes almost. The carburetor is a little bit smaller, and then the fuel filter is a little bit, no wait, reverse that. The fuel filter is a little bit smaller and the carburetor is a little bit bigger on this hose, which is kind of weird, but what are you going to do? I got it on, I got it started. I'm just trying to, just needs a little bit of encouragement to get on there all the way, which is a good thing because at least I know that there's not going to be any air getting sucked in through there, and it's going to stay on, unless, you know, somebody pulls it off or something, which is a different story. I don't believe it. The hose got twisted around when I was putting it on. The hose itself got twisted around, and I'll show you with this. Pretty much the hose was like this. It would face, here's the hole for the carburetor where it hooks onto. It was facing like this. It was supposed to go on like that. And when I put the gas tank in, it twisted a little bit. So it twisted so it was like this, and now the hose is crimped like that. Just like with the problem with this thing. The hose is crimped now. It's like this. I tried pushing it, trying to push it so it like straighten out, but it's just too. You can see my dog in the background. Say hi, King. Good boy. So now I got to pop this back out, pop it back off, and realign. I'm gonna turn the hose a little bit to compensate for when I put the gas tank in, because when I put the gas tank in, like I said, it was like this, and when I put the gas tank in, it twisted so it was facing back towards me a little bit. So I'm going to take it out and have it so it's facing towards the back of the chainsaw, and that way when I do put the gas tank back in, it turns this way, and it will fit perfectly on, hopefully. Which is another reason I bought this. It's a lot more durable. I can use pliers on it and pull on this a lot stronger, and it doesn't leave a mark. It barely makes a little indentation, but versus this thing where you can pull on it, and now there's a little rip there because it's not as strong. So I definitely, there's like a little rip there just from me doing that, versus this, which is more durable, and hopefully it will last a lot longer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pull this out. Yeah, and I just pulled it out of where the glue was too, which kind of, you know, sucks, but the little green piece got pulled out as well. That's kind of annoying, but I can fix that once the thing gets on there. I can fix that. I'm both trying to push this in there so it gets straight, and I'm also trying not to accidentally puncture it, because if I have to go through taking the fuel line back out just to redo it all, it's going to be quite annoying, but it honestly, doesn't like this part, because the one thing that this was is that this was able to fit through the little, there's like a little path for the hose to go in, and this one, being as flexible as it was able to kind of fit up and around a little bit easier, being more flexible than this hose, because this one, it's going up and then it's kind of wanting to just crimp instead of just going nice and smooth like that one did. So I'm trying to, this might work better instead of puncturing it. I don't want to puncture the hole by using anything sharp. Obviously, you don't want a hole in your fuel line. I think that I actually got it up and out. Now I just got to kind of get it back into the carburetor better. Of course, I can't really see with the amount of light. Nope, it's just, man. It actually really is crimped up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, there we go. Well, I got up and out, which is a good thing. Now I'm just going to try and encourage it to go in. I got it up and out now. You can see it right here. I got it up and out, so the crimp isn't there anymore, but now I just got to pull it back out here and then push it on and straighten it out. May need to, I'm also trying to get this green part back in there so that the hole there is closed, because that did pop out and it was kind of hard to get in there without all the plastic in the way, and now it's not wanting to go in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull it out like that. Going to there we go. Got that back in. Now I just got to kind of be careful not to let it pop back out again. Because I guess the glue wasn't quite as dry as I had hoped. If it was more dry, it probably still would have popped out, but oh well, what are you going to do? That stuff happens. That's another thing I've learned when working on these saws, and while working on anything really. Stuff happens and you might not want it to happen, but it does. And when it does happen, and you're not expecting it, and you don't want it to happen, you get quite annoyed, but it's not the end of the world. Especially like if you lose something, like if you lose a bolt and you freak out on it, you get really annoyed and mad, and you start like just getting kind of fed up. It could be worse. You could have lost something a lot more valuable. You could have lost a finger or something. Just think about that. Think about working on a chainsaw. You lose something that goes over here, like a bolt to the exhaust, and then you get all mad. You think you're mad down. Imagine cutting with this thing and cutting off your finger or something. Then you will be mad. Then you can have every right in the world to go screaming, have bursts of anger, because that will hurt and you will not be happy. Point is that a lot worse can happen than having something not go your way, and it's not like I'm perfect at it. I do get annoyed a lot working on this stuff. When something breaks or when I mess up, I do get quite upset sometimes, and when that happens, I just try to calm myself down and keep going. And as of right now, I got the hose on. It's on all the way. It's just, as I was afraid of, I did cut to a little bit too much. And at this point, as hard as that was to get on without crimping, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull, here, I'll come over to show you. The hose line is on in the carburetor right there. It's on, but there's a little bit too much there. It's not wanting to push in all the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the hose in there a little bit, push the fuel filter towards the back of the tank. That way there's not as much play there. It's only going to need to be pulled in like 4 to 5 centimeters, and it should be alright. I'm going to try that and see how that works out. Yes, I did just knock over a drill. Does it still work? Yes, it does. That is one thing I like, our Black & Decker. I do like Black & Decker. They're a pretty good brand. I've had good luck with them. I mean, this is a pretty powerful drill, and this 20-volt lithium-ion battery is pretty tough. I have a Black & Decker little weed eater, just a little electric powered one. I also have 2 gas powered ones, but whenever I'm just not feeling like putting gas in or mixing new gas, I use the electric one. It's pretty tough. It works pretty well. Not for really thick stuff, obviously, but it works. Good enough for some of the small stuff around the yard and like around trees and stuff. It'll work. It obviously isn't going to be as powerful, but now I just got to, what I want to do is I want to the fuel filter in here is kind of like, it's going down that press. So pretty much the way the fuel filter is in there is it's down in there, and then it's not crimped, but it's like that. It's kind of facing like this. Almost. It's not crimped, which is good, but it is kind of like at an L almost. And I don't want it like that. I kind of want it to be almost straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it towards the back. That way it kind of goes in and then over like that. So it's in towards the back, especially when you're low on gas and you have it like, you're cutting like that, it'll be towards the back where that gas is going to flow down towards the bottom of the tank here. So that way when you're at like quarter of a tank gas, it won't just die on you kind of like this, and you don't have to go fill it up at a quarter of a tank. You can run it until it's just about empty, which is a plus when you don't have a gas can right next to you. You have to walk to your truck, house, garage, whatever it is to get the gas can. It is really happy where it is, I'll tell you that. And bingo! We have success. There we go. Now I'm going to show you just real quick where I put the fuel filter, just because my explanation was not very well. It was not very good. If you can see that, the fuel filter is way back there in the back. So that way when it's cutting like this, the fuel filter is right about here. Right about there. So when the gas is all down here at the bottom, you can continue cutting. So that's where the fuel filter is, down there. I got that fuel line on. It's not crimped anymore. That little green piece, I'm just going to put a dab of glue on there just to make sure it sticks in and stays there. And we'll get this thing put back together and get her fired up, hopefully. I'll tell you one thing though. I don't know